Disney is single-handedly ruining Daredevil Born Again, and the viewership numbers speak for themselves. The show is bleeding almost half of its viewers, so I think this is the perfect time to fully discuss what the show's actual problems are, and the easiest way to lose half your viewership is by not putting your main character in his own show. A major problem that Daredevil Born Again struggles with is not using Matt Murdock and Daredevil as separate characters. He has a major lack of screen time as a whole, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. He's barely in his own show. In episode 1, he only has 13 minutes of screen time in a 48-minute episode. That's just 27%. And for a season premiere, after not being around for a year, you would think it would be a breakout episode that starts off really hot. But it starts off very, very slow, and it only gets worse. In episode 2, he has just 7 minutes of screen time out of a 43-minute runtime. This lack of screen time continues for most of the season, all the way up to episode 6. The most he gets in any episode is 19 minutes out of the 47-minute runtime. Still not even half, and that's a huge problem for a main character, especially in a show called Daredevil. If you're a logical thinking person, you'd assume that if the show is called Daredevil, you should be seeing Daredevil for a majority of the time. This isn't a show like The Walking Dead where your protagonist is Rick Grimes, but you also get full episodes dedicated to many different characters. That show isn't called Rick Grimes The Walking Dead, it's called The Walking Dead. But for a show that's called Daredevil, you expect to see Daredevil a majority of the time. And in this case, that just doesn't happen. If you compare it to the Netflix Daredevil show, he averages about 35 to 60% of the screen time per episode, which makes sense because he's the main character. And a lot of that screen time consists of him being Daredevil, dealing with his job as a lawyer, or having real moments with his friends and colleagues. And some might say to me, well, he can't do that in Born Again. He's in hiding or he's a fugitive. But the problem with that is he has Karen Page most of the time. So you could easily put him with a character and have him actually talk. But a lot of the times he's just standing around. It feels like every time we see him, he's hurt or in the background and he's barely saying anything, while everybody else is talking around him. Even the moments that are supposed to be the big oh my gosh moments aren't that impactful. Like when Karen Page gets her wig pulled off and Officer Powell finds out it's actually her. How are they expecting me to react to that scene? Are the writers really expecting me to be shocked? That brings me to the second issue. This show struggles with side characters. They aren't interesting at all. Even Karen Page has taken a massive hit when it comes to the character development compared to her on the original show. We meet her and suddenly she's this super trained badass who's stiff and doesn't really have any emotions for most of the show. The fact that they replaced interesting characters with genuinely boring ones just makes it hard to get through episodes. You have McDuffie, who every time she's on screen basically doesn't contribute anything. And then you have the psychiatrist Heather Glenn, who's just having trauma flashbacks about Muse from the first season. It makes you feel like they took Muse, who was a very interesting Daredevil villain, and a character I was pretty excited to see fleshed out, and just killed him off so they could try and set her up to be the female Muse for season 3.
Right.
It feels completely unnecessary. They could have fleshed out a new storyline with Muse and made him the main antagonist of this show. He already had that mysterious factor, which made you wonder more about him. The murders and the graffiti he was doing around the city in people's blood was really, really interesting. But they just wasted it. And speaking of wasted, that brings me to the problem with the existing characters like Wilson Fisk. He's kind of been backseated for his wife so she can have more of a storyline, and then for her to take like 3 episodes to die was really, really annoying. And it just took way too long. Wilson Fisk at this point has been built up and used and teased for so long. He's in 4 of the 5 seasons of the Daredevil show if you include the Netflix series. Both series use him as the main villain instead of someone else. So I'm getting a little burnt out on Wilson Fisk as a character. That's why I was kind of excited when they were adopting the Muse storyline, because it was different. He's a less popular character, but also a very interesting one. But they rushed him so they could hurry up and make the psychiatrist Muse. They did the exact same thing with White Tiger, a character that we've never seen in live action before, and that was a great opportunity to flesh out that character, because the Daredevil show was the perfect place for that to happen. And it was unfortunate that the actor passed away, but him never being used before and then just killing him off in the show and handing it over to his niece, who they barely did anything with, and the whole BB report subplot where Fisk killed her uncle and she wants revenge on Fisk for who he really is, and using Daniel to do it, it's just something I don't find interesting at all. She takes up a lot more screen time than I wish she did, and sequences where I feel like you could have Daredevil doing reconnaissance on the anti-vigilante task force warehouses or progressing the story in other ways are instead wasted on the BB report and B-roll shots of her interviews and her going back and forth with Daniel. And I want to ask all the Daredevil fans out there and all the people who have seen this show, what do you genuinely think of it? Because honestly, the best character so far is Bullseye, and the best action scene is that diner sequence. He's clearly the MVP of the show. So if you take him out of it, what are people actually liking about this story? Because to me, you barely see Daredevil. You barely see Matt Murdock. There's so many storylines that just don't interest me. I'm struggling to get through the show, and they're not doing a great job of keeping me interested or making me want to come back for the next episode to watch some monotone storytelling I really don't care about, and Daniel and his story. I really don't care about the BB report. I have zero interest in what Karen Page is doing in her Spider-Man Mary Jane missions. It takes away from the story progression that we could be having between Daredevil and Wilson Fisk. The things that people praise, like the Bullseye episode and the episode that looks exactly like the Netflix show, which they should have just been doing the whole time, took half the season to happen and they captured it perfectly. So why didn't they just make the entire series look like that from the first episode? If they were able to recreate it so closely, why not just do it from the beginning? And I heard it was because they used the rest of the technology to be able to make the show look like that, but what does that even mean? I just don't understand. And all this isn't just how I feel. A lot of people feel this same way, which brings me to the reality of it. Daredevil Born Again has lost almost half of its viewer base. 46% of its viewers are gone. And the show wasn't doing crazy numbers to begin with. So to lose 46% of your viewers just goes to show that people are not interested. And I could argue it's because they're not showing Daredevil in a Daredevil show. They're making this ensemble story with storylines that nobody cares about. They're bringing back characters for nostalgia bait like the Punisher and Jessica Jones. And now we know that Luke Cage are going to get brought back too, because the whole season's ending has already been spoiled on Instagram. So my faith that they can turn it around in the finale or in season 3 is very low. And honestly, I don't see it happening. I know one thing for sure that would turn the show around would be putting more Daredevil in it, bringing back more Matt Murdock, and changing the complete tone and style of the show to match the Netflix one better. But as of right now, the quality is nowhere near up to par. The viewership is in shambles, the storytelling is awful, and the characters just aren't interesting. Those are honestly justifiable numbers, and I don't see them doing any better if they don't make those changes. I think it's to the point where people just genuinely aren't interested anymore, and I don't see it redeeming itself in the season finale. Do you guys genuinely enjoy the show? Have any of you been watching it? What do you think they need to do to fix it? I want to hear what you guys think down below in the comments. But those are my thoughts about Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.